The battle had already lasted 3 hours. Space between the twin stars burned with light. Plasma trails cut across the dark like angry scars. Ships from 12 species moved in tight formations, firing in waves, retreating, advancing again. The Coalition fleet was large, but the enemy armada was larger. Their black warships pressed forward without fear. On the Coalition command deck, alarms flashed red and gold. Officers shouted numbers across the room. Translators converted a dozen languages at once. The air felt heavy, thick with tension, and above all the noise, one thing stood out: the humans. Human ships were always loud in battle, not reckless, not chaotic, just constant. They spoke every second. Coordinates, shield levels, ammo counts, small jokes, calm corrections, even warnings that sounded almost polite. Adjust vector 2 degrees port. Copy that. Missile lock confirmed. Good hit. Their voices ran through open Coalition channels like a steady drumbeat. It made other species nervous sometimes. Humans talked even when things looked bad, especially when things looked bad. Tactical Officer Selrin of the Veiler species stood at a station near the center display. His 4 eyes tracked the front lines. He did not like human methods, but he respected them. Right now, 3 human cruisers were holding the left flank. They were outnumbered. Enemy destroyers surrounded them, and a wide arc plasma of fire rained down on their shields. Yet the human channel remained steady. Shield dropped to 60%. Rebalancing. Target Alpha marked. Firing. Selrin watched as one enemy destroyer split open in silent flame. Impressive, he muttered. The enemy fleet responded with heavier fire. Explosions flashed across Coalition screens. One of the human cruisers took a direct hit. Its shields flickered. Still the human voices continued. Damage contained. Reactor stable. Stay in formation. Then something changed. It was small at first. A pause. Selrin's upper right eye twitched. The human channel had a gap in it. Just half a second. Then 1 full second. No voice. No signal burst. He leaned closer to his console. Static. The channel indicator light shifted from green to gray. Across the board, human ships still moved. They still fired. But their communications were gone. Selrin's breath slowed. He checked secondary frequencies. Nothing. Encrypted band. Nothing. Direct link request. No response. The human ships had gone silent. Around him, Coalition officers kept shouting reports. No one else had noticed yet. Selrin felt cold. He whispered, almost to himself, "They've gone quiet." The words were barely audible, but the command system heard them. A hidden program, buried deep inside Coalition emergency protocols, recognized a pattern. It had been written long ago. Few officers knew about it. Fewer still understood it. Across the Coalition network, a red symbol appeared. Code red. Human silence detected. The words pulsed once, then twice. Several consoles locked automatically. Navigation systems requested confirmation for retreat vectors. Fleet AI shifted to defensive posture without being ordered. Confused murmurs spread across the deck. What is code red? Is that an error? Wise evacuation routing suggested. Selrin did not answer. His eyes remained fixed on the human ships. They had stopped broadcasting, but they had not stopped moving. In fact, they were moving more smoothly than before. The 3 cruisers on the left flank broke formation at the exact same second, not a millisecond apart. They angled outward, drawing enemy destroyers deeper into a narrow corridor between drifting debris fields. No communication guided them. No visible signal connected them. Yet they acted as one. On the main display, the enemy fleet reacted with confidence. Their formation tightened. They believed the human silence meant damage, disruption, panic. Enemy command vessels broadcast openly. Human communications loss. Press advantage. Advance all wings. Selrin watched as black warships surged forward. Enemy fighters swarmed like insects toward the silent cruisers. Behind him, a junior officer asked, "Are the humans disabled?" Selrin did not look away from the screen. "No," he said quietly. "They are not." The first enemy destroyer entered the debris corridor. For half a second, nothing happened. Then its engines cut out. Not destroyed. Not hit. Just stopped. The second ship followed. Then the third. On the coalition sensors, strange patterns flickered. Energy spikes. Short, sharp bursts of signal interference too precise to be random. The silent human cruisers pivoted. Perfectly aligned. They fired once each. 3 clean beams of focused energy. 3 enemy destroyers lost weapon control instantly. Not explosions. Not chaos. Just systems shutting down. More enemy ships pushed forward, still believing they faced broken opponents. Selrin's lower hands tightened against the edge of his console. "They celebrate too early," he murmured. On the display, the enemy flagship transmitted a wideband message, audible to all. "The humans are crippled. Finish them." But the human ships remained silent, and as more enemy vessels crossed invisible lines in space, their systems began to fail one by one. Weapons offline, engines stalling, targeting arrays blinded. No screaming, no panic from humans. Just motion, precise, controlled, calculated. The red code red warning continued to pulse softly above Selrin Station. Other officers were starting to understand. Silence did not mean weakness. Silence meant something else. And out in the burning dark between the stars, the enemy fleet pushed forward in triumph, unaware that the moment the humans stopped talking, the battle had already changed. The red warning still glowed above every console. Code red. Human silence detected. On the coalition command deck, confusion slowly turned into fear. Junior Officer Terex stared at the message. His scales shifted in uneasy patterns. He had studied battle law. He had memorized evacuation codes. But this one felt different. He turned toward the rear platform where Commander Arvik stood. "Commander," Terex asked carefully, "why does silence trigger retreat protocols?" Arvik did not answer at once. He was old for his species. His armor was ceremonial, marked with scars from wars long finished. His eyes remained fixed on the tactical display, where human ships move without speaking. "Because," Arvik said quietly, "we learned that lesson 200 years ago." Terex hesitated. "Learn what lesson?" Arvik's voice lowered. "That when humans go quiet, the war has already changed." The lights of the present battle flickered across his face. For a moment, he seemed to look through the display, not at it. 200 years ago, he began, there was a Carthan expansion. The bridge fell silent around him. The Carthan empires were powerful. 3 of them. They believed humans were loud, emotional fighters. Easy to predict, easy to exhaust. Terex listened closely. "At first, they were right," Arvik continued. "The humans were losing." The bridge display shifted as Arvik authorized archival footage. Space appeared on the screen. Older ships, older designs. Human cruisers burned in open space. Carthan warships outnumbered them 5-1. The humans broadcast constantly. Arvik said, "Requests for aid, damage reports, emergency retreats." They sounded desperate. The footage showed explosions. Human ships breaking formation. Carthan fleets advancing with confidence. The Carthan commanders believed victory was near, Arvik said. Then the recording shifted. Human channels went silent. No more distress calls. No more formation updates. No surrender signals. Just nothing. The Carthan celebrated. Arvik said, "They thought the humans had lost coordination." Terex swallowed. "What really happened?" Arvik's eyes hardened. The humans stopped reacting. On the archival footage, Carthan ships pushed forward to finish the battle. Then it began. One by one, Carthan vessels flickered. No explosions, just darkness. Engines failed. Weapons powered down. Targeting systems displayed errors. Navigation grids glitched and reset. All hostile vessels reported simultaneous system collapse. Arvik said, "Across 3 fleets." Terex stared at the screen as ancient warships drifted helplessly in space. "How?" he whispered. The humans had prepared for weeks, Arvik replied. While they spoke loudly in battle, they were mapping Carthan systems, studying energy signatures, learning command patterns. The footage showed human ships repositioning quietly. They allowed themselves to appear weak, Arvik continued. They allowed damage. They allowed losses. His voice grew steady. And when the Carthan pushed too far, the screen flashed. All Carthan vessels went dark at the exact same second. No communication, Arvik said, because silence meant activation. Terex watched as human ships moved through disabled enemy lines with calm precision. They had already infiltrated navigation grids, Arvik explained. Embedded logic faults in targeting AI. Inserted control overrides into fleet coordination software. The Carthan had not been destroyed by fire. They had been shut down. When humans go quiet, Arvik said softly, it means they stop reacting. He paused, and start calculating. The archival footage shifted again. Reports filled the screen. Carthan supply routes collapsing. Planetary defense systems locked. Military networks corrupted beyond repair. Within 1 week, Arvik said, 3 Carthan empires surrendered. Terex's scales paled. They collapse. They can no longer trust their own systems, Arvik answered. Their ships would not respond. Their weapons would not fire. Their navigation grids betrayed them. Arvik deactivated the footage. The council amended the emergency charter that day. He spoke the words slowly, as if reciting something sacred. If human combat communications cease, withdraw immediately. Terex looked back at the present battle display. The human ships were still silent, still moving in perfect coordination. Enemy vessels were beginning to flicker on sensors. Minor system failures reported. Weapon lock delays. Shield fluctuations. Across the bridge, another officer shouted, "Enemy destroyer reports propulsion instability." Another voice followed. Multiple hostiles experiencing targeting lag. Terex felt his pulse race. "They are doing it again," he whispered. Arvik did not smile. "Yes," he said, "and the enemy does not yet understand." On the far edge of the display, the hostile fleet continued advancing, unaware of what was happening inside their own systems. No human voice broke the silence. No warnings. No threats. Only movement. Precise. Measured. Controlled. The red code read, "Alert pulse once more above the command deck." Terex finally understood. The silence was not fear. It was preparation. And in the dark space between stars, as the enemy pushed forward with growing confidence, the humans remained quiet. The silence stretched across the battlefield like a shadow. On the coalition command deck, voices rose in sharp debate. "We must withdraw," one admiral said, his crest flaring with alarm. "The charter is clear." Another commander shook his head. "It is a trick. Psychological warfare. The humans want us to panic." "They have done this before," Commander Arvik replied calmly. "That was 200 years ago." The second commander snapped. "We have improved. Our systems are secure." Arvik did not argue. He only watched the tactical display. The human ships were no longer holding their old positions. They had drifted apart in smooth arcs, forming patterns that looked almost random. But Arvik knew better. They were not random. They were aligning. No open transmissions crossed coalition channels. No human voice requested support. No distress signal flashed. Yet their movements were exact. Terex leaned closer to his console. "Commander, human vessels are emitting low-energy bursts." "Encrypted?" Arvik asked. "Yes. Not standard coalition encryption. Something else." Arvik nodded once. "Quantum lattice network." Terex swallowed. "So they are communicating." "Yes," Arvik said, "just not with us." Across the battlefield, human cruisers shifted into triangular formations. Smaller frigates broke away and moved toward empty regions of space. To untrained eyes, it looked disorganized, but each movement happened at the same precise moment. Deep within the human fleet, autonomous battle algorithms activated. No captain needed to shout orders. No officer needed to confirm coordinates. Every ship carried the same predictive models. Every system shared the same calculations. They were not reacting to the enemy anymore. They were synchronizing with each other. On the enemy flagship, confidence remained high. "They are scattered," the hostile admiral declared. "Press forward." Strike wings accelerated toward what they believed were isolated human vessels. Then the first report came. "Supply carrier Delta 3 is not responding." The enemy admiral frowned. "Clarify." "Engines operational, but navigation locked. Route recalculation failure." Before the admiral could respond, another officer spoke. "Jump beacon at Sector 7 is offline. Reinforcement corridor unstable." "That is impossible," the admiral said sharply. "Our beacons are shielded." On the coalition deck, Terex's screen filled with shifting data. "Commander," he whispered, "enemy supply routes are fragmenting." Arvik watched quietly. On the battlefield, one human frigate drifted close to a debris field. It released a small, nearly invisible drone. The drone vanished into the dark. Moments later, 3 enemy cruisers reported internal system lag. Targeting delay, 1.3 seconds. Shield modulation error. AI conflict warning. The enemy admiral's voice grew tense. "Run diagnostics. Is this viral interference?" Another officer answered, fear rising in his tone. "Our combat AI is receiving false predictive data." "How?" "No external signal detected." That was the terrifying part. There was no loud hacking attempt, no visible beam, no dramatic energy surge, only quiet interference. Human silence meant that weeks ago, perhaps months ago, infiltration had already begun. On the coalition deck, several commanders who had argued against retreat began to pale. "They're inside the enemy systems," one muttered. Arvik did not look away from the display. They had been inside for some time. On the far side of the battlefield, an enemy reinforcement fleet prepared to jump through a stable corridor. The jump failed. Space rippled violently. The corridor collapsed before activation. "Reinforcement jump point blocked," Terex reported. "How many?" Arvik asked. "All of them." The enemy admiral's confident posture broke. "Our backup AI cluster is unresponsive. Manual override not responding. Navigation grid corrupted. Ships that had been advancing proudly now slowed. Formation spacing widened. Weapons that should have fired in clean volleys misaligned by fractions of a second. Fractions were enough. Human cruisers pivoted in unison. They did not rush. They did not shout. They adjusted by the smallest margins. And every enemy weakness appeared exactly where human fire met it. On the coalition deck, Terex felt a chill run through him. "They are not attacking harder," he said softly. "No," Arvik replied. "They are attacking smarter." Across enemy channels, panic finally replaced confidence. "Who authorized system patch 32? "I did not." "Core processor conflict." A full enemy strike wing accelerated to flank the human right side. For 3 seconds, they disappeared behind a field of sensor interference. Then something strange happened. They did not reappear. Terex blinked at his screen. "Commander, I have lost tracking on Strike Wing 9. "Sensor glitch?" another officer asked. Terex checked 3 independent arrays. "No," he said quietly. "They are simply gone. No explosion. No debris field. No distress signals. Just absence." The enemy admiral's voice echoed across open channels, sharp and desperate. "Report." There was no answer. On the coalition deck, silence returned, not human silence, but stunned silence. Arvik finally spoke. "When humans go quiet," he said, "the fight has already been decided." On the display, the red code red alert continued to pulse. Out in the dark, human ships move with calm precision, their encrypted quantum network linking them like a single mind. And where an entire enemy strike wing had once flown in tight formation, there was now only empty space. Panic spread across the enemy flagship. "Re-establish contact with all strike wings," the admiral ordered. No answer. "Switch to emergency frequency." Static. Hardline signal relay. Nothing. Around him, Officers worked quickly, their hands moving across glowing panels. Reports flooded in. Weapon systems not responding. Engine output capped at 20%. Navigation authority denied. The Admiral's eyes widened. Denied by whom? No one could answer. Across the battlefield, human ships continued to move. Not fast, not aggressively, just precisely. On the Coalition command deck, every screen tracked the same pattern. Human cruisers formed a wide arc around the enemy fleet. Frigates sealed off flanking paths. Smaller support ships drifted into positions that blocked retreat vectors. "They are sealing corridors," Terex whispered. Commander Arvik nodded. "Yes." Enemy counterattack wings attempted to launch. Before their weapon ports could open, targeting arrays glitched. Firing sequences reset. Missile bays refused to unlock. "They are intercepting before launch," Terex said. The enemy admiral slammed a hand against his console. "Manual fire." "Manual override unavailable," an officer replied, voice shaking. "Command authority transferred." Transferred where? The answer appeared on the main display. Human ships. Not one had fired wildly. Not one had chased fleeing vessels. They simply adjusted positions, each movement small but exact. When an enemy ship attempted to rotate for a shot, a human cruiser drifted slightly, cutting off its line of sight. When another ship tried to accelerate toward open space, a human frigate slid into its path, blocking the corridor without firing. No explosions filled the void. No bright flashes of destruction. Just systems shutting down. One by one, enemy vessels lost propulsion. They did not crash. They did not spin out of control. They simply slowed until they stopped. Weapons powered down. Shield emitters dimmed. Command codes rejected. On the Coalition deck, officers watched in silence. "This is not a battle," one of them murmured. Arvik answered quietly, "No, it is control." The enemy admiral tried one last time. "Activate emergency jump." "Jump drive locked," his technician replied. "Coordinates sealed." "By what?" A new signal appeared on every enemy screen. It was the first human transmission since the silence began. "Clear. Calm. Measured. Engagement concluded. Stand down." The voice was not angry. Not proud. Not loud. Just steady. The admiral stared at the display. Around him, his fleet drifted helplessly. Every major ship was surrounded by at least 2 human vessels. None were firing. They did not need to. "We are not destroyed," one officer whispered. "No," the admiral replied slowly. He finally understood. Human silence had not meant rage. It had not meant panic. It had meant focus. They had stopped speaking, because speaking was no longer necessary. Every calculation had already been made. Every outcome already mapped. Every possible escape already sealed. On the Coalition deck, Terex checked the battle timer. "Commander," he said softly, "it has been 6 minutes." Arvik did not look surprised. On the battlefield, a final enemy cruiser attempted to reroute internal power. For half a second, its engines flickered. A human destroyer adjusted position by a single degree. The cruiser's engines went dark again. 7 minutes. That was all it had taken. 7 minutes from the moment the human channels went silent. No massive explosions. No desperate last stands. Just a fleet brought to complete stillness. The human transmission repeated once more. Engagement concluded. Stand down. Across the battlefield, Coalition forces slowly lowered their own weapons. There was nothing left to shoot. The enemy admiral leaned back in his command chair. His hands trembled, not from injury, but from realization. They had prepared for loud humans, for shouting, for aggression. They had not prepared for quiet. On the Coalition command deck, the red warning still pulsed above every screen. Code red. Human silence detected. But now, beneath it, a smaller message appeared. Threat neutralized. Arvik exhaled slowly. Around him, officers began to understand what the galaxy had written into law 200 years ago. When humans shout, you may still have a chance. When they go quiet, you have already lost. The great chamber of the Galactic Council was quiet, not the tense quiet of battle, not the fearful quiet of waiting, but a thoughtful silence. Representatives from dozens of species filled the circular hall. Light from the central star filtered through the high glass ceiling. In the center of the chamber, a single symbol glowed above the floor. Code Red. Human silence detected. It remained active in the Council's charter. It would not be removed. Commander Arvik stood among the delegates. The recent battle had ended days ago. The enemy fleet had been returned, disabled but intact. No worlds had burned. No cities had fallen. The humans had released control of the enemy systems once surrender was confirmed. They had not taken territory. They had not demanded tribute. They had simply restored balance. At the edge of the chamber stood a young cadet, newly appointed to observe council procedure. His uniform was still stiff. His eyes moved from one elder to another. He finally raised his hand. Permission to speak. The chamber allowed it. The cadet stepped forward. If humans could disable fleets in minutes, if they can collapse empires without destroying them, then why do they not rule us all? Murmurs spread softly through the hall. It was a simple question, a dangerous one. From a highest tier, an elder archivist rose slowly. His species was ancient. His memory held records of wars long forgotten by others. He looked down at the cadet with calm eyes. Because silence is not their weapon, the archivist said gently. The cadet frowned. But we have seen what happens when they use it. Yes, the archivist replied. And that is precisely why they do not use it lightly. He began to walk along the inner circle, his voice steady. Humans do not escalate first. They argue. They protest. They negotiate. They warn. Images appeared in the air above the chamber. Records of past conflicts. Human diplomats speaking calmly across hostile tables. Human fleets holding defensive lines instead of advancing. Human commanders broadcasting warnings before firing. They endure insult, the archivist continued. They endure pressure. They endure loss. The cadet watched the images carefully. In many cases, the archivist said, their enemies mistake this endurance for weakness. The chamber grew still. But humans do not confuse patience with surrender. A new image appeared the recent battle. The moment human channels went silent. They calculate thresholds, the archivist said. Lines that should not be crossed. He paused. And when those lines are crossed, the image froze on the silent fleet. They stopped talking. The cadet swallowed. So the code red exists not because humans are violent. No, the archivist answered. It exists because humans are disciplined. He faced the chamber. Any species can destroy in anger. That is easy. Anger is loud. Anger is visible. He looked back toward the cadet. But restraint backed by absolute capability, that is rare. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as the central symbol pulsed once more. Code Red remains active. The archivist folded his hands behind his back. Humans could have conquered the Carthan empires, he said. They did not. They could have dismantled the recent enemy alliance entirely. They did not. They restored systems. They returned ships. They accepted surrender. The cadet's voice was quieter now, so they only act like that when forced. Yes, the archivist replied, when pushed beyond warning. A silence passed through the chamber, not fearful, understanding. Commander Arvik finally spoke from his place among the delegates. We maintain the code red not because we expect humans to turn on us, he said, but because we know what happens when someone ignores their warnings. The cadet looked up at the glowing symbol again. And if we never push them that far, the archivist allowed a faint smile, then you will never hear their silence. The council slowly began to disperse. Representatives spoke in softer tones now, not about fear, but about caution, about diplomacy, about respect. The code red remained written into law. It was not a threat. It was a reminder. Far away, in quiet sectors of space, human fleets continued routine patrols. Their channels were open again. Calm voices exchanged simple reports. Weather patterns on colony worlds. Supply schedules. Navigation updates. Normal sounds. The kind of sounds that meant balance. Across the galaxy, species that once feared human aggression began to understand something deeper. The danger was not their anger. It was their stillness. Because the galaxy does not fear when humans shout in battle. It fears the moment they go quiet.